Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Fernanda Davila Cuencar, and today I will be presenting my research title, Evaluating the Effectiveness of Two-Factor Authentication in Protecting Personal Information. This research examines whether using two-factor authentication or 2FA provides stronger protection for personal information than relying only on passwords. During this presentation, I will briefly discuss the background of the study, the research question and hypothesis, the methods and results with the graphs and the figure, the discussion, and how my findings compare to my previous research. Oh, and finally, the conclusion. So, my class English 2311, Technical Communication, Professor Melissa Bustamante, and today is July 2nd, 2026. Okay, so let's continue. Let's start off with the introduction. As technology has become a larger part of our daily lives, more personal information is stored online than ever before. People regularly use online accounts for banking, healthcare, shopping, your clothes, for your email, for workplace, and social media like Instagram and TikTok, for example. Because these accounts contain sensitive information, protecting them from unauthorized access has become an important cybersecurity concern. Previous research has shown that password-only authentication is vulnerable to cyber attacks such as phishing and credential theft. For example, Oda and colleagues concluded that relying only on passwords no longer provides enough protection because passwords can be stolen or guessed by attackers. They found out that combining multiple authentication methods significantly improves account security. Similarly, Wang and colleagues reviewed different authentication systems and concluded that multi-factor authentication provides stronger protection than password-only systems because attackers must bypass multiple layers of security instead of only one. So, the purpose for this experiment is to evaluate whether 2FA improves account security. Okay, so for the research question for this study was, does two-factor authentication reduce unauthorized logins compared to password-only security? Based on previous cybersecurity research, my hypothesis for this experiment is that participants using two-factor authentication will experience fewer unauthorized login attempts than the participants using the only password method. That said, this hypothesis was based on the expectation that requiring an additional verification step will make unauthorized access more difficult to log in. So let's continue with the methods. I did a flowchart so we can understand better and more visuals. To investigate this research question, I designed a fictional quantitative experiment, which I chose it at the beginning of the semester. The study included 20 volunteer participants who were randomly divided into two equal groups. Group A used password-only authentication, while Group B used password plus sorry, plus 2FA authentication, two-factor authentication. The experiment lasted 1 week. During this week, simulated unauthorized login attempts were performed under controlled conditions. Security logs recorded whether each unauthorized login attempt was successful or not. At the end of the experiment, the total number of the successful unauthorized logins was compared between both of the groups to determine which authentication method provided stronger protection. Okay, let's continue with the table, sorry. The results clearly show a difference between the two authentication methods. The password-only group here experienced 8 successful unauthorized login attempts, while the group using the password only combined with the 2FA only experienced 1. This means that the password-only group experienced 7 more unauthorized logins than the group using two-factor authentications. You can even see the average unauthorized logins per participants, which is greater. Overall, these findings indicate that adding a second authentication factor substantially reduced unauthorized access during the experiment. Okay. Here is the graph I was talking about. This graph visually compares the results from both experimental groups. As shown in the graph, the password-only group had much higher number of successful unauthorized login attempts than the two-factor authentication group. This graph clearly shows that participants using 2FA experienced fewer security breaches throughout the one-week experiment. In conclusion, for this slide, the results show support the hypothesis that two-factor authentication provides stronger protection than password-only security. Let's continue with the discussion. For the discussion, the results of the study supported the original hypothesis. One possible explanation for this is that two-factor authentication requires users to complete an additional verification step. When you log in into your account, you put your password, and then you look for another method, for example, a code in your phone, in your email, in your computer, so you can log in 2 times. So it can be before the access is granted. Even if a cyber attack successfully obtains a user's password through phishing, they must provide a second form of verification. Because of this additional security layer, password tests become much less effective, making unauthorized logins more difficult. Although the two-factor authentication improves account security, one limitation for this is that it may reduce the convenience because the users must complete an extra verification step every time they log in. Okay, so let's continue with the relationship to the previous research. With my chosen peer-reviewed journal articles at the beginning of the semester, I put 3 for the IMRA in the discussion part, but here it says that, oh, sorry. I have two sources out of the 3, which I think were the best ones to talk about. Site and researchers found that stronger cybersecurity defenses reduce vulnerabilities and improve the protection of sensitive information. The research supports the results of my experiment because both studies demonstrate that stronger security measures reduce the likelihood of successful cyber attacks. Also, my findings also align with Pachaev and scientists who concluded that adding additional software and hardware security measures reduces cyber risk and improves security. These similarities reinforce the conclusion that layered cybersecurity strategies such as 2FA are an effective approach for protecting personal information. Lastly, in conclusion, the purpose of this study was to determine whether two-factor authentication provides stronger protection than password-only authentication. These findings show that participants using 2FA reduce unauthorized access than participants relying only on passwords. However, the study also had limitations, including the small sample size, a simulated testing environment, and a one-week testing period. Future research should be used in larger samples and longer testing periods. Here are my references, which is 2 from introduction and 2 for discussion. And this is all. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I appreciate the opportunity to present my research today. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, concerns, I will be happy to answer them. You may also contact me using my TAMIU University email. Thank you very much.